But my name is Anthony. For those of you who don't know me, I am the care pastor here at Hoboken Grace, and I'm so excited to be able to walk you through week 4 of a series we're calling Making Love. And we're really destroying that myth that finding love is about finding the right quote-unquote person. You know, we've been establishing what it takes to build meaningful, lasting relationships, and to we're calling people to engage this larger truth that God is calling us to make love our defining characteristic. And if you've been journeying with us the past few weeks, we've been going through some really powerful truths. And in fact, if you've missed any of them, I want to encourage you to, download our app. You can go and you can see all the past conversations, or even through the podcasts to be able to, because we looked at some really foundational truths. And one of those is in week 1 that we should continue to go back to over and over and over again, which is, yes, you can do this. You can love the way that God has called us to do. And some of you have been journeying and saying, well, can I really love this way? And I just want to encourage you, yes, you can. Now, week 2, we learned that initiation is one of the most complicated aspects of making love. And we also know that Pastor Chris has been really pushing the envelope with his innuendos. So, and then last week we learned into what goes on to, making our love really last. And here's the thing. If you're like me, you've learned a lot. You've wrestled with some things. You felt convicted about some things. And listen, and maybe we've been talking about certain things, especially around relationships, and it's brought up some wounds from the past, or, both things that you've done or things that have happened to you. And as a result, we can lose our confidence. And truthfully, we need confidence if we're going to make love. I guess we're not going away from the innuendos. Anyway, if you're like me, the best thing we can offer, right? What Jesus is saying is the best thing that we have to offer is love. And if loving is something that I'm called to do, if loving is supposed to be my defining characteristic, maybe you've been like me the last few weeks and you're going, okay, great, but how do I get better at loving well? How do I do it? And you're like me, you've probably said this at one point or another. I've never set out to be bad at loving. I'm just not very good at it. I understand that. I have thought the same thing over and over again. Some of you might be familiar with this book called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. It was recommended to me and my wife Dana during our premarital counseling. And we were going through it, and basically it says that when, the author says that everyone experiences or feels love really in 5 different ways. Words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, acts of service, and receiving gifts. Now, when I read this book, I was immediately able to identify my love language, which is words of affirmation, which means words that are spoken to uplift, words that are spoken to encourage, words that are spoken to empathize in a positive manner. I this book says, I feel love when someone uses words of affirmation to me, right? Words of affirmation are like, you're doing great, or man, I really appreciate you doing that. You're so great at that. Or tonight we're having tacos. I mean, there are ways. Those are ways in which I experience love through words. Now, my wife experiences love through quality time, which means she feels loved the most when I spend quality time with her. No biggie, right? Well, not so fast. Right? It's not just going to be around her. That doesn't cut it, or even a standard movie night. Why? Because really, the quality time is more than just time spent with the person. It's attention. It really should be called quality attention, but that doesn't sound as good. So here's the problem, though. When it comes to expressing love, we tend to express love the same way that we feel loved. So think about it. Early on in my marriage, I think I'm doing a great job at loving my wife. I'm saying I love you. I'm saying you're beautiful. I'm sending, text messages with hearts, and I'm writing notes and sticking them in her lunchbox, basically killing it. And she's responding to me with like, oh, thanks. Or, okay. And I'm like, and? Is there anything else you want to say? And, conversely, we'll both be coming back from a long day at work, and we'll come home, and we'll be sitting on the couch in front of the television. She'll be like, let's turn off the TV, let's put away our phones, and let's do a puzzle, or let's play a game. And I'm thinking, wait, your love language is quality time. I'm sitting here in the living room, in my boxers, Jeopardy's on. This is quality time. And it's no surprise that for the first few years of our marriage, many arguments stemmed from my inability to recognize quality time and realizing that my wife doesn't necessarily experience love the same way I do. Like I said, I never set out to be bad at loving. I just wasn't really good at it. Which brings us to today. Like I said, you might be journeying with us the last few weeks, and you might be asking yourself, okay, I understand I need to learn to love better. I understand I don't need to be jumping over the wall, but how do I love well? Well, the good news is that God doesn't just tell us to do something. He's always teaching us how. God is teaching us how to love. He is the definition of love. He's given us his Spirit so we can be the embodiment of his love. So today, I want to share to you 5 specific key ways in which we can love well. Now, as Lonzel said, the message notes are in your app, so all you'd have to do is go into the app so you can follow along. The 5 reasons are there, as well as our passages that we'll be journeying through today. So really, the first step on how to love well is this. I need to align my definition of love with his. I need to align my definition of love with God. And what's that definition of love? Well, I guarantee you've all heard it at a wedding at some point. It takes place in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, famously known as the love verse. And love is defined this way. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered, and it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. That's the goal. This is the love that God intended. This is true love. This is the love that God models, and that Scripture defines. So we've often heard this verse at weddings, and we think it only applies to marriage. But here's the truth. The one who wrote it, the Apostle Paul, wasn't married. The Apostle Paul wrote this to believers, those who have walked into this relationship with Jesus Christ, and he is focusing on and describing and defining what true love really is. He says love is patient and kind. Love is patient and kind. It doesn't look for instant gratification or immediate change. Rather than wounding or reminding of past failures, it encourages. It's always thoughtful in actions or speech. Love doesn't envy or boast. It celebrates when one another is celebrated. It doesn't have to one-up the other person or somehow be better. In fact, love admits failures and shortcomings rather than making excuses or pretending they don't exist. Love isn't rude or self-seeking. Rather than demanding or manipulating to get what it wants, true love, real love, actually finds joy in serving the other and putting their needs first. It even studies the other's needs and wants so it can meet them. Love isn't easily angered and doesn't keep record of wrongs. It can handle interruptions, shortcomings, disappointments. It gladly overlooks small offenses and graciously forgives larger ones without bringing them up later. Love is not just a thing that we can throw around. And love is not undefined. It has been defined and it has been demonstrated. In fact, this is how God loves us. He doesn't just tell us how to love, he demonstrates it. God is patient and kind to us. Those of us who've walked into this relationship with Jesus, when we think about just how patient and kind he's been, God, though he has every right to be, isn't self-seeking. There's another passage that the Apostle Paul, when he's talking about Jesus, he's talking about the embodiment of love. He says this to the Philippians in chapter 2, verses 5-8. He says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. He says, you want to love like Jesus? You have to have the same mindset, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. But he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even on the cross. He's God. He's the creator of the heaven and the earth. He is the creator of you. He's the creator of me. He's the creator of the person you love. He's the creator of the person you don't. He's the creator of the person you agree with. He's the creator of the person you disagree with. He could have come and demanded that we love him. He could have come and demanded that we serve him. He could have come and demanded that we treat him as God. But instead, he took on the humble position of a servant and modeled the definition of love for all of us. He's the one who set the standard of love. He defined it. Guess what, guys? That means we don't get to define it. We don't get to define love. He's the one that is love. He defines it. That would be like me going into your house and renaming your pet. I don't get to do that. God told us to love. He defined it and he demonstrated it. And then once we acknowledge that, once we use that as our foundation, then we can begin to love the way he's called us to love. Number 2, the next step to love well is this. I need to draw near to the demonstration of love. I need to draw near to the demonstration of love. If God is the one who defines it and the one who demonstrates it, well, naturally, I need to draw near to the one who demonstrates it, who defines it. Your time with him is going to be your key to becoming like him. Pastor Chris was talking about this. He talks about this all the time. He talked about this last week. You tend to become like the people you spend the most time with. He's talked about how funny he's gotten over the last year. He's been spending every day with me. I'm kidding. Well, a little, but anyway. But it's true. The more you spend time with someone, the more you become like them. So you want to learn to love well, you've got to spend time with the one who's literally defined love, who literally is love. If I want to be a better skateboarder, I don't spend time with a fisherman. It doesn't make any sense. You understand this. It's like for me, I go to a place that has like thick dialects or accents and I'm toast, right? Like I start talking to them even if I don't know the language. Like it's almost insulting. Like I remember one time there's this woman on our staff. We love her to death. She's from North Carolina, right? I'll be in a one-on-one meeting with her or I'll be on a group meeting with her. And after 30 minutes of being in the room with her, I'll come out of there. I'll be like, bless her heart. No clue, know why it happens. But it's true, we understand that. When you're around the person, you spend more time with them, you become like them. With your friends, with your family, with those you try to emulate, right? With those you want to be like. And people are going to notice. You know, last night God demonstrated this to me in my life in a pretty smack in your face kind of the way. Last night I was selfish and I got angry. And I stupidly took it out on my wife. And I'm thinking to myself, great. You are preaching on love tomorrow, and you can't even love your own wife the night before doing that. You're doing a great job. And my wife, who's incredibly gracious, just asked me in that moment, how's your God time today? And it wasn't biting, right? She wasn't like, how was your God time today? No. She's incredibly gracious, and she was honest. And to be honest, yesterday was not a good day in my pursuit of God. I did not have my God time. Life got in the way. Whatever the excuse that we have to not spend that time with God, insert here. And my wife took notice. And because I hadn't spent that time with him, my ability to love the way that he wanted me to love, I got further and further away from the ability to be able to do that. But you can tell. You can also tell when someone has spent that time with God. There's just something about them. In fact, God brought me to one of these passages last night when she was like, maybe you should spend some time with God. And I was like, fine. And I went and opened up my Bible. And he brought me to this passage in Exodus, which I've read over and over again, and I absolutely love. And it says this. It says, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets, right? He's coming down with the 10 commandments. When Moses comes down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. Sometimes we don't like to go into his word all the time because we think nothing's happening. But he's doing something each and every time we're in it. And here's the thing, people noticed. Not only that, but you begin to recognize his voice better. People are always asking me, well, God, Anthony, how do I hear God's voice, right? How do I hear him above all the noise? And I said, well, you got to be in relationship with him. Rick Warren is a pastor out in California, and he uses this illustration that I've used over and over and over again, where he says, listen, when my wife calls, even if I didn't have caller ID, she doesn't need to say, hey, this is my wife. I know her voice because I've spent time with her. It's the same thing with God. You want to hear his voice. You want to experience him. You want to draw near to him. You want to love like him. You have to draw near to the definition of love. You have to draw near to him. And there are things that he talks about in his word that tells you how you can do that. Number one is prayer. Right? Prayer, literally, one of my favorite definitions over this past year has been prayer is literally a recalibrating of my heart to God's. Prayer is the opportunity for me to go to him, no matter what's going on in my life, to share my heart with him. And as a result, he's able to recalibrate my heart to him. He is able to teach me to love and to speak to me through that. The other one is fasting. Fasting usually means that we are fasting from something, right? Typically food. As a church, our rhythms say that we usually fast together on the 3rd. I believe it's the 3rd Thursday of every month that we fast from food, and that anytime we feel that hunger, that we focus on God because he's the one that ultimately brings the nourishment. Rhythms. Lonzel was talking about rhythms in our video earlier. Rhythms is in the app. It's been a powerful tool for us for the past few years because it allows us to put these things into practice. In fact, when you download the app and you turn on your notifications, it'll even remind you throughout the day at noon, at 4:30, hey, don't forget to spend time with God. Don't forget to spend time in our monthly meditation passage. And last but certainly not least, daily Bible reading. Daily in his word, because his word is yet another way that he communicates to us. His word is another way that he's going to speak into our lives and to encourage us. So how are you daily in his word? Maybe it's through a devotional. Maybe it's through our daily Bible reading plan that we email it to you in your inbox every Monday through Friday. Maybe you're journeying it with people, like through us, that we get a chance to do it. That's why the morning show, Anthony Chris in the Morning, has literally changed my walk over the last few years. I don't even care if any of you are watching. I'm enjoying it. Because it allows me to be in his word every single day, engaging with him and listening to him and trying to pull truths and seeing how he's speaking to me and teaching to me through it. And here's the other thing, guys. He doesn't just tell you to do these things. He's demonstrated it himself. Jesus constantly went and prayed to the Father. He constantly went off to connect with his Father. That's what prayer is. Fasting, Jesus himself fasted in order to connect with the Father. Jesus had rhythms in his own life. He took things and asked us to remember. That's why we do things like the Lord's Supper. That's why we take communion. That's literally a practice of rhythm. That's why we have baptisms, right? That's why we celebrate baptisms. It's a rhythm. It's a thing that he puts in our life to be able to remind us of him and his journey. And then daily Bible reading. Jesus is consistently quoting scripture. Whenever you read him, you hear him over and over again, strengthening his walk and strengthening his arguments with the use of scripture. And number 3, which is difficult for some, I understand this. Number 3 is I need to stop seeing trials as obstacles to love and start seeing them as opportunities to grow in my ability to love. See, in Romans, the Apostle Paul writes it this way. He says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And so the truth is, if that's true, for everything to work together for our good, God has to be in control of all things. And everything that happens in our lives is God filtered. So if that's true, if all things God works for the good for those who love him, then all things have to be in control by God. We understand that. We get that. But that also means that everything that happens to us has been filtered through God's hands. That includes every ounce of pain, every ounce of hurt, every tear, every emotion, every bout of anger has passed through God's hands. And yeah, we can spend a lot of time asking why and wrestling and even being angry at God. But it has happened. We acknowledge that that's happened. We bring it to God, and then we start to change our heart a little bit. And we start changing our heart by stopping to ask why and starting to ask, okay, God, what are you teaching me in this? What are you teaching me as you pull me through this? Because it's true, so often the things that happen in our relationships sometimes we did nothing. The world's a broken place. Things happen to us. And there is pain and there is hurt. And yes, it is true also that there are things that we have caused pain and hurt to others. But God is saying, I can redeem that too. But we got to understand that all of these are under his guidance and care. And so when we start saying, God, what are you trying to teach me? Because this was filtered through your hands. So what are you trying to teach me? And your heart, man, when you start engaging with God that way, your heart begins to change. James, the brother of Christ, literally puts it this way. He says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds. I'm like, that's a stretch. But no, he says, consider it pure joy because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. This is the brother of Jesus. Some of you are tracking and are saying, yeah, I want to love well, but that person is making it very difficult for me to do so. But here's the thing. When people around you screw up, they're not keeping you from being loving. They are giving you an opportunity to love. It probably isn't hard for you to think about somebody that's kind of difficult in your life to love right now. It's a coworker who's willing to do anything to get ahead, including take your ideas for their own. The child who is constantly knowing how to push your buttons and leaves you exasperated and flustered again. The person who is constantly on your team that undermines your leadership and thinks that he or she has better ideas than you and communicates it with kind of a sharp, biting tongue. The friend who is one way to your face and then completely backstabs you to others. I'm sure the list can go on and on. So what do we do with those people? With constant strained relationships. Our natural tendency is to want to avoid them and run away, but is that something that honors God? Consistently, we see Jesus that was no stranger to loving difficult people. And some of you are like, well, of course, he's God. All right, well, let's talk about Moses. Moses was no stranger to leading and loving difficult people. Even after rescuing them out of slavery and leading them safely out of, slavery from the Egyptians and bringing them into new freedom and provision from God, they were literally shedding tears over the menu. And water that they were going to be drinking. And they literally at one point said, it would be better for us to go back into slavery and then we might be able to choose another leader. And the crazy thing about it is that he didn't even retaliate against these people. Moses didn't even defend himself against these harsh accusations. Instead, he demonstrated love and humility and compassion to those he led, and he consistently interceded for them. He pled with them. He pled with God for their health, for their protection. He asked God over and over and over to forgive them every time they made a bonehead move. And at the very end of his life, he was still lovingly leading the Israelites, and Moses remained steadfast to his last days and made sure that God had another leader to take over because he didn't want these people to wander without a shepherd. Moses never stopped loving them, even at their worst. And by God's grace, we can too keep on loving difficult people that God has placed in our path. Yes, the easy thing to do is to cut them out of your life when possible and just to avoid them. But I suggest that if we are to do that we should probably be more loving and patient like Jesus as we bear to seek to offer each other kindness and mercy no matter how we are. We need to ask God for the grace to keep, to not run away, but to keep on engaging that hard to love person. And no, it's not, yes, my wife blew it, I get to love her. No. Remember, you have to do it without keeping score. That's 1 Corinthians 13:5. You have to do it without boasting. 1 Corinthians 13:4. We don't say, man, do you see this? I am loving well. We also do it without wanting or needing something in return for them to notice. That's also 1 Corinthians 13:5. Some of you are like, well, maybe I don't want to love like this. Yes, you do. Because remember, the spirit of the definition of love dwells within you. That's the Holy Spirit. If God created love, he defines love, and he gives us the ability to love the way that he wants us through his Spirit. And God not only calls you to do this, but he also promises you that he's working in you to develop this, right? Let's look back at that Romans passage we started with here. We said, and we know that all things works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And then he says, for those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the likeness of his Son, that might be the firstborn among many brothers. He's not going to let you down. He's going to continue to give you opportunities for you to get better at this. And yes, it takes time. It's this idea of becoming conformed. You are becoming more and more like him. The more you give over to him, the more he can form you. But you are going to do this. You're going to need to do this. And yeah, you might be saying to yourself now, man, there are things that I am lousy at. Yes, me too. But the most important thing is that you continue to put these principles into practice. We understand this in life. If you're going to get better at something, you don't just stop doing it. You continue to work at it. Which brings me to number 4. I intentionally engage community. Listen, we don't just tell you to join a team and join a group because we need more people. No, it's not that at all. You cannot love others if you're not in community with others. You cannot practice loving others if you're not around others. And sometimes we can pull away from community because it's safe. I can't get hurt in my bubble. Well, I think the reason they call it a bubble is because eventually it pops. And are you going to want to be alone in that bubble when something causes that bubble to pop? Are you going to want to be alone when there's no protection around you at all? Now listen, I know that this series has been hard for some of you, and week after week learning how to love better when you have been through a extremely painful situation when it comes to a relationship. And sometimes it's hard to think that how you can even love again, let alone be loved. But I'm here to tell you, don't let that pull you away from him. This isn't the end of your story. Our hope is in him, a God who rescues, a God who saves, a God who redeems. Our God is not a God who just works inside of our teeny tiny box of understanding. I'm talking about real hope in him, knowing that without a doubt, he is still working in the midst of a broken world, in the midst of the dark times, in the midst of these bleakest seasons of your life. Don't let being in those seasons pull you away from the people that he's intentionally surrounded you with. In fact, many times I see God use his people, the people in your community, to encourage and to love one another. One of the reasons why the early church was exploding, right? If you look in the early book of, if you look in Acts, in the early chapters of Acts, it talks about the beginning of this thing that's called the church. And one of the reasons why the church was exploding and thousands of people were being added to their numbers every single day and people were being baptized all over the place is because it was being completely different. It was caring for people. What a novel thought. It was in the middle of a culture where everybody was out for themselves. Everybody was looking for their own ambitions. And Jesus stepped in and said, hey, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Cling to him. And guess what? He's going to give the ability to do what? To love your neighbor as yourself. That's how this thing called the church began. And that's what we have to do if we have any hope of loving well. Which brings me to point number 5. I need to give people the permission to speak into my life. I don't know if you noticed this warning from Pastor Chris that he mentioned this verse last week in Proverbs, but it says this, it says, at the end of your life, you will groan when your flesh and body are spent. You will say, how I hated discipline and how my heart spurned correction. This isn't just a proverb on discipline. It's also a warning to those who won't allow people to speak into their lives. I have a handful of individuals in my life that I always go to for advice and insight, but I also expect those same individuals to know that they have the freedom to speak truth into my life whenever I do anything that's unloving. You know, Kelvin and Nancy and Re-Engage, in our Re-Engage ministry, our marriage ministry, they're, like I said, they're leading one of those groups right now, but one of the action items at the end of every week in Re-Engage, there's an action item. And one week it says that you're supposed to contact at least one person who knows you well and will tell you the truth. And you're supposed to ask them to share with you a few things that they've seen you do or not do that have undermined your marriage. And the very next sentence says, don't be defensive. Simply thank them for sharing with you. Well, that was a difficult week. For those of you in Re-Engage, you're like, can you let us know that week so we can skip it? But it's one of the most powerful exercises, and it really allowed me and my wife to allow others to speak into our lives. People that we trust. People that we've given permission to. So who you've given permission to? Who has that permission to do it for you? Without you blowing up, without you becoming defensive, without you accusing them. You have to give them permission. And if you don't have anybody like that, seek it out. And then remember that next sentence. Don't be defensive. Simply thank them for sharing with you. It's a great opportunity to practice responding with grace and gratitude. Now, this is an important addendum to number 5, right? When finding those people to speak into your life, make sure they're engaging these 5 principles too. Because there are a lot of people that want to speak into your life. That doesn't necessarily mean that they should, especially if they have a different definition of love. You know who these people are. Consistently, we like people in our life that fill us up. These are the people that constantly drain us. Which is why you need these 5 principles in order to love well. And you're not going to find those people to speak into your life if you're neglecting them. Guys, we can do this. These 5 things are completely doable. I can align my definition of love with his. We can do that. I can draw near to the demonstration of love. You can do that. You can stop seeing trials as obstacles to love and start seeing them as opportunities to grow in my ability to love. It's difficult, but you can do that. I intentionally engage community. You can do that. And I give people permission to speak into my life. You can do that. Jesus says, you want to love well? Then these are the things that we need to continually practice. We need to let God define love. After all, he is love. Draw near to the creator of love in order to love better. If you're here today and you started today saying, I don't know how to love well, now you do. And if you don't know Jesus yet, what are you waiting for? He is so ready to do this in you. He cannot wait to do this in you. It is no mistake that you're here today. I don't care who invited you. I don't care. He wanted you to be here today, and he wanted you to hear this, that he can do this in you, and he wants to do this in you, no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been. He is pursuing you to this moment right here and saying, are you going to say yes? Because I cannot wait to start working in you. And when we love the way that God defines it, when we become a people who love in a way that is patient and kind, when we love in a way that does not boast and is not proud, when we love in a way that is not rude, that is not self-seeking, when we love in a way when we're not easily angered and we keep no records of wrongs and we rejoice in the truth and we protect and we trust and we hope and we persevere, that's the kind of love that we're talking about here. That's the kind of love that draws people in. That's the kind of love that heals and restores and reconciles. We have to see this as the most important thing that we have to offer. We have to invest most in what we believe is most important. And if we want that to be love, then if we have any hope of loving this way, then we have to draw nearer to the one who is love. This is how he loved us. We love because he loved first. That's how we do it. And I'm here telling you here today, this is how he demonstrated it for us at the cross. Because we've done absolutely everything opposite of what he's called us to do. I know I have. Have I been rude? Yeah. Have I envied? Yeah. Have I been self-seeking? Oh yeah. Have I boasted? You betcha. But despite all of that, despite each and every time that I was unloving to him, he continued and he went to the cross. And he did that for you too. And those of you who are walking into the relationship for the first time today, that is powerful. And those of us who've been in this relationship over and over and have been with this relationship with him for years, guess what? This is the kind of reminder we need. He went to the cross for you too. And that's how we can love well. By drawing near to him and allowing him to speak into our lives of how we can do it better. Will you pray with me? Father, thank you for this. But we can do this. We can do this. But we can't do this on our own. And maybe that's where we're getting confused. I can't, but you can. And you want to do it through me. And maybe that's the reason. Maybe we're trying to love this way, God, without you. And no wonder we're coming up short. We need to love with you, because of you. I was reminded this morning of what a powerful practice it is at the end of the day at the end of the day praying, God, show me the ways in which I was unloving. And so my prayer is for right now, and my friends at the 12:30 service, is to ask this question. God, show me the ways in which I've been unloving. And then teach me how to love the way you want me to. Because apart from you, I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't, but you can. And you want to do it through me. And that's true for each and every person that's here today. We love you, God. It's all because of Jesus. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.